And welcome back. Congratulations, Jeff, on winning the giveaway. I blanked. I had so many questions that we were just talking about something crazy. So we've talked a little bit about calendars and how you all decided to kind of set them up, and we've talked a little bit about events that you have loosely. Now let's talk a little bit more on a personal level with events and festivals and things that happen at certain times in your game. What are some? We'll start with that have happened. So, what are some awesome events or dates or festivals or things that you have put players through that worked good or bad? Like, what are some things that the players have actually gone through that you experienced?
I mean, mine's really quick because my homebrew world's fairly young as far as how many people have played through it. Uh, but they played through Midsummer, which I didn't make it as creepy as I would normally because it was a session 0. But it is the time when the veil between the Feywild and the material plane is at its thinnest. So, of course, lots of little Fey creatures, I used boggles in this situation, came and terrorized the festival in the main city. And the players so perfectly bonked their way through the encounter. Not like the fun bonking, though, just like bonk with their hands and weapons. Which was kind of awesome because they did not just like hack and slash their way through the encounter, which I was like, cool, you guys, distracted them and bonked them and made them feel like a little kid that got in trouble. And they also terrified the town with a um like an illusion of a dragon's roar. So they kind of ended the festival prematurely. Um, Whatever. So that's the only festival in my homebrew world that I've actually ran through. I can't wait to run through more because I feel like every one of my festivals has got a cool little twist. Taryn.
Likewise, I
That's it.
can't wait for you guys to run through some of mine. Now, the only one I've gotten to run my players through is like a super happy one that happens like just only happens in this one town because they use magic to basically negate the season. So while everybody else in the world is suffering from a really harsh winter, they're in springtime all the time. So that's the only one I
Oh,
got to run my players through. But it's a lot of fun. I did for this one because I just got out of like a super dark scenario and it had escaped this Stitch. I let them have a reprieve because they messed up pretty heavily. This group did,
the
and
Stitch.
the
I
Stitch.
know the
You
Stitch.
do know the Stitch. There are many Stitch. There are Stitch
Oh,
eyes,
there's
stitches.
multiple stitches?
There are. But I wanted to kind of give them something goofy to do, and like there's this group had been obviously like they just got thrown together, so they're going in, and I wanted them to bond over some goofy stuff, and like a couple of them are way too serious, which of course is great. But I wanted to take the opportunity as a DM to make them embarrass themselves. So I set up like a carnival game and like there's like racing and all kinds of stuff. But like, so there were different kinds of dice rolls that they could do, not just checks, but then there was like rolling a number of d6 and the first person to reach a certain number like won prizes. And the prizes is where I had a lot of fun because I let them roll a d12 for the prize they got. And so some of the prizes, it was like all cosmetic stuff like that. If a kid won it, they couldn't hurt themselves with it because like this festival had a lot of children. So it was like kind of candies and potions and all kinds of stuff. So at one point, my very serious character, she won this like special like bag of candy. And she just was like, I'm just going to start eating it. So she ends up with like blue skin, a dog tail, rabbit ears, like when she spoke, bubbles came out, like silly cosmetic stuff that was like, it was just something goofy that the players like, because then they were like, ooh, I want a piece. And so then you had everybody going,
Yeah.
like, I'm rolling to see what goofy thing I get to run around with. And then they met the judge, who is like this super serious character in the setting. And so, like, they they had no idea. And like, so they meet this very important guy, and they all look like just children, and it was this great cinematic moment. Like, yeah.
I like it.
That's super cool. One of my favorite like festivals or events actually comes a year and a half after like the worst dungeon master experience that I've ever had,
Oh.
like of me being a dungeon master. So as a new dungeon master, well, as a kid, I had tons of social anxiety. So becoming a dungeon master was like I have all this power and people like have to do what I say. This is awesome. So obviously that went to my head. It was super huge, and it got to a point where I was like, yo, I'm going to show how grimdark I am by just killing off my players, just like story kill, not even just like combat wise. So then obviously that didn't go well. So murder them in a super huge mega way, and then hit the restart button for their characters, and they're like, oh shit, which they love me, so they're like, D, that wasn't cool, but we love you, so we'll keep playing. And I was like, oh, I feel horrible about that, holy shit. So then I made a whole arc to try to redeem myself, which was like Thin Veil, which is like the veil of life and death is like thinner, which is kind of like Day of the Dead sort of thing. So then they pretty much go on this quest. The end of days is near and all that kind of stuff, and they go to this festival to like talk with their loved ones, to seek guidance from like veteran warriors and all that kind of stuff, to get advice on how to handle certain situations. And then in that moment, I was like, they didn't know it was coming, but I introduced their old characters that had passed away, and like, told them like, here's all your play characters, and they're full shiny at their height of their power, and they say to you X, Y, and Z advice, and not only that, but they grant you an actual piece of their armor that they were wearing before they died or whatever. And they're like, yo, and they're just like so hyped about it, and then it made them like super excited to go into the final boss battle. So that was like really cool, because I felt like I got to redeem myself a little bit. I will never make that mistake again. If anyone dies, it's a conversation or it's combat. It's like, that was a big lesson. So, yeah, that was mine.
I love it. I love it. I mean, in that regard, always have an out. If you're gonna do something drastic like that, always have a good out. Like, if the players don't react how you want them to, like maybe they can fight their way out of hell. And then you're not really dead. Just kidding. Yeah. Just like all of our fun sitcoms, like, I don't know, How I Met Your Mother, and then they add more episodes, or New Girl, where they add a whole another season. We're like, oh shit, like, us as creators, like, we always get these ideas, and we're like, oh yeah, this is awesome. Mm-hmm. Ooh, it's not. Shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But thinking about events and things, and I don't think. Not any big events, anyway. I don't think any of my players have gotten any big events. There's been some festivals with some games and circus stuff. We had a casino that they went to once, which was just like a year-round party, which was fun. And I had different dice mechanics to incorporate, like playing poker. So like it's a D12. It's like a hand of poker, right? A 1 is an ace and a 12 is high, but then one beats it. So you can have the different combinations of poker, which was fun. In Rime of the Frost Maiden, however, the moon cycles, or the monthly cycles anyway, I incorporated it into moon cycles, which is kind of an event. Every month, depending on which town you're in, has to sacrifice something, right? Heat, or food, or people. So they haven't encountered it yet, but it's definitely it's coming up, where they're going to be around when one of these events is happening.
Like
and
2 weeks from now.
How are they going
It'll be the end of the campaign.
How do they incorporate that, right? And how do they deal with it? Like, if is one of their favorite NPCs going to be on the chopping block? Are they going to...
If it's Janice.
Or, whatever, right? Like, they need heat, so like everyone's going to freeze to death. But there's a lot of things coming up, and I've kind of incorporated some stuff that we do for Adventures Middle Earth, where they have like the fellowship phase, where they do like collapsing of time, where if we're currently in like late fall, early winter, but like I want to get to spring, so I might do something to fast forward them to get to the point where I want the season to be different, right? But it's interesting, though. It's an interesting thing to play with events and things, because we create all these awesome things, and then like they never see them, because the entire campaign takes a month and a half, and you're like, well, shit, like that. that didn't go as you would think, over time. But let's see. Not necessarily related to events and dates, but we did have a question about favorite character death. We can throw that in the mix. Why not? Anybody?
You know what? Why don't you start us out, buddy?
Me?
Yeah.
I don't think I've had a favorite character death. I mean, I've only had, you talking about like player character death?
You asked the question.
It was from the chat. I mean, the one thing is when my players were like 18, I think, and they were fighting Vulrock, who is a god, and he killed 5. Like he not just unconscious, he killed 5 of 6 of the party members, and GW had like 10 hit points left and killed him. And then I had him do this huge ceremony where he was calling out to my Zeus, who is called Ezir, like, you need to fix this, blah blah blah, and we do these really awesome, like, so when I do resurrection stuff, like usually I have all the players bring something to the table, and there's a certain DC, and however many people RP to do something, it changes the DC. We need a certain number of successes to do whatever. But this was a GW show, so he had to role play to get all these people back. And Torque was brought back, and then Cerise was brought back, and Sane was brought back, and what was Logan's character's name? Tormund was brought back, and we get down to Anne's character, Denahi, and Denahi was one of the first characters in the campaign. There was only 3 of them left. Players would drop off or whatever. She decided because of life and everything else that she didn't want to come back. So she had told GW and I this prior to that session, that she was like, I think Denahi would stay dead. And we're like, fuck. So like we didn't tell the rest of the party, and I'm like, I have to lie to them. I have to lie to the rest of the party so that this hits home. And I apologized afterwards, and the players were like, yeah, we didn't. It was better that we didn't know, because they were like, people were crying, people were emotional. They're like, and she doesn't come back, and everyone was just crushed, and it was ridiculous. But as a storyteller and an entertainer, I'm like, this is amazing. But like as a DM and like a friend, I was like, fuck, this hurts. Like it was like a month left in the campaign. Like that's it, and we're done.
I remember I was watching
like a
and
2.5 year
crying.
campaign that you have Anne and Denahi with us the whole time, and she's never died. And it makes sense because it's a willing creature. Her brother died, and she's kind of emo anyway. And if she saw her brother, she wouldn't come back. So I'm glad she made that character choice. But damn, did it suck! Damn, did it suck! But like, it was great for story purposes. But that was rough. What about you guys?
I have one. It's not mine. I've never had a character die.
Yet.
Solo.
Dust off the shoulders. Yeah.
Well, I've always been the DM. So, anyway, my last campaign, my home game campaign, it ended abruptly with a kind of TPK. Not because of my decisions, though. It's because of the players' decisions. They knew they were in a bad situation, and they ran in anyways. Because of reasons, their characters are still living, and I was going to create a one-shot for them. But so what happened was the NPC that was with them was jumping over this gap in this bridge, and it was like into the abyss below. And she fell, and one of the players who had started a romance up with this NPC just immediately jumped in after her. And I was like, are you sure? Like, I would allow you to rethink this. Usually I'm like, well, you said it, it's done.
Yeah.
But I was like, you're going to die. It's thousands and thousands of feet down unless if you guys figure something out, which like spells were spent at this point, like nothing, there really wasn't anything they could do. And he's like, yeah, I would jump in after her. Okay. So that was my favorite moment because he's like one of those players you really have to pull him out. Like he's a great role player if you pull him out into the story.
Yeah.
So I was just like, oh my god, he's so invested that he's just gonna kill his character for this NPC. It was just a moment where like your DM heart just grows a little bigger, you know. Yep.
Amazing.
Well, mine is an NPC, but like because my players were all hyper introverted. Like my players when I first started were a very, very introverted group. Like they loved RP, but I had to find a way to bring them out. So naturally I stuck I stuck an NPC in the party, which was me. And she was a celestial warlock paladin named Vega Bright Eyes. She was a tiefling. She was beautiful. And I mean, I like, it was kind of an interesting thing because of her character traits. Like she wasn't super active, but it was just enough to help get like role play started. And then she was just the kind of person anyways that would kind of back off and just like watch stuff happen. Super selfish. And over time, like they trying to reach out to this character, they kind of pulled her in, and that was the whole point. Her death, which was kind of planned, just not the way that it had happened. Like I knew because they were completely at that point, like they knew about a big bad, but they were like, it's not our problem. We don't want to deal with this crazy thing. And I was like, I have to get them invested. And by that point, they were attached. So, they had just discovered the base of operations for this big bad basically, and they're climbing out of this ravine that is enshrouded in darkness and has really dark, crazy eldritch things in it. So they're climbing out. I rolled a natural 1 for Vega climbing out of this ravine. So she falls and takes a lot of damage.
Yeah.
1 hit point left somehow still. Like I rolled it all, still had 1 hit point. My sister's character climbs in, brings her out, and is like, they're all freaking out, and they're like healing her, and like her, like, I mean, at that point too, I was like, she's messed up, like she's broken, like her horn is broken off, like she's really messed up, because in my mind it's like logically she's it was brutal, because I was like, she fell long way and somehow survived. She probably shouldn't have survived it.
Yeah.
And so they heal her. Well, this big thing walked, like I think it's, what is it, like the Night Walker, the really giant shadow fiends, and I had warned them.
You fought one in my... No, I don't think you were in that one.
I wasn't in that one. I watched that one. These guys at this point are level 6.
Ooh.
And I told them, sometimes, especially if y'all are going in here, you're gonna find things. Just as an FYI, you should run. Find a way to run.
You don't fight. You don't have to fight everything.
Well, they did. They immediately started fighting it. Well, and the character that Vega was, she had just kind of told him, she was like, I don't care about anybody. And so we get to this point. It's my sister's character and my other friend. And if this hit lands, like it kills them. Yeah. So I had her, Vega, use one of her abilities, which was basically she took the damage for them. She shot in front of them and took the hit for them. And again, if you're killed by one of these things, you cannot be resurrected. And so I had druids, because again, they were about to die. So I had my druid people swoop in, save the day, and get them out of there. But they're still carrying her body around. Mm-hmm. And they, like, the cleric is sitting there and he's like trying to cast and trying to bring her back, and nothing is working, and nothing is working, and nothing is working. And I mean, it was like, I hated having, like, letting it, but I mean, they weren't letting me get in there. So I was just like, their characters are panicking. And I mean, it was a really emotional moment, but like after that, all of them were so driven of like, we're going to figure this out. We're going to defeat this thing because we're going to bring her back. And it was like, it was super emotional. And I also cried because I was like, I love Vega, you bastards killed her. Like,
that's amazing. It's similar. I love these DM stories where mine's in the same vein, where I had a player. She was 4'9", like the littlest itty bitty thing, and she had the biggest personality, and she played a barbarian, and who was of course like 6'4" and all super muscled and all that kind of stuff, living out her best fantasy life. Mm-hmm. And there was a typical like temple situation where they got the treasure, they were getting out of it, they were being chased by huge mobs of like monsters, and they're running and the whole temple's coming down around them. But during the session, they were just like cursed. They kept getting natural ones. They failed all their saves. They were getting all the damage. I was getting crits, and so it was like a bad time. And I felt like shit because like my players were stressed out. They were like looking at other character sheets, looking at all their inventory, like trying to figure out a way to get out. But I was like, you know, looking at everything, I was like, they still got a lot of this dungeon to get out of, and I don't know if they're going to be able to do so. I remember this particular player. She goes, "All right, guys," because everyone started arguing at the table. It got so intense, and there was so much tension that everyone started like raised voices. And she goes, "Like, guys, shut up, shut up. All right, DeAngelo, here's what I do. You know, I'm gonna go ahead and stop, running to turn around, and I'm gonna face the horde, and I'm gonna go ahead and just like, sacrifice myself to fight them." And then everyone's like, "You can't," and everyone's just like silence, and they're like, "You can't do that, Kelsey. You can't like, it's cool. We'll find a solution. We'll just da da da." And she's like, "No, everyone go," and we were like an hour past our normal play time, so it was like emotions were high, and then she ended up was unwavering. And one of our players was already down, and the fighter was already carrying them out and everything like that. So she sacrificed herself. And like I, as a DM, like we all do, we want to make our players happy to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And I was like, in this moment, I could either think of a Deus Ex Machina to like try to get her out of the situation and like have her live, or I could just let her do her thing and let the dice rolls determine what happened. And we did, and of course she died, but everyone got out, and everyone at the table was like silent, and they were like looked at her, and then they were like, "You never have to pay for pizza again. Like every time we meet up on Wednesday nights, you never have to contribute. Like you sacrifice yourself." And then it was like such a bonding moment for the table, and they were like, "Yo," and they gave her all the good stuff for her next character. So it was a touching moment, So it was good. Yeah.
That's really good. I mean, I love those moments, and like, us as storytellers and everything else that we're doing, and that's kind of the essence of the show today, is talking about all of those things that make our games feel more real. And it's just really fun to watch that happen organically. So we've talked a lot about your calendars and how you start and how you name them and how big they are or small they are, and some of the events and the seasons and everything else. And we've talked about some events that you or your players have actually experienced. What about some events that they haven't done yet? Something that you're very excited for them to maybe get to or maybe experience that you're allowed to talk about?
Diane, do you want to go first?
So they are about to get into like our September, which would be the autumn equinox, which is pretty cool. I really don't have anything super interesting that I'm excited for them to get to until my October. So they have like 2 months in game. Maybe I'll do a time jump just for it. I mean, who doesn't want to see dead people paraded through the towns? And other things happen too.
I'm so excited for it. Jinx will be terrified. I am excited.
Jinx, I know Jinx would not like it. So,
yeah. For me, I was hesitant to spoil this, but now I'm just going to tease it. The event at the end of the month on the 31st is going to be some of the Olympic festivities for my 13th month. I'm not going to tease too much about it, but essentially it's however we decide to break down who's going to play and when they're going to play, y'all are going to play characters that are from the past. So this will be in the first or second age of Ukudor, so you are like heroes or huge gladiators, people, it's all just lore stuff. So then if Realms hears about it or hears about a person or a name, it becomes canon at that point. And that's stuff that the Patreon subscribers will help build, or some actual NPC PCs that will live forever if they live. But the way that I'm going to cycle that event is like if it's a 2-hour block, whoever's playing that'll be this this year's tournament, and then the next group will be another year's tournament. So it'll be like the same tournament, just every few years we'll do another one. So these are other heroes and things that will live through that. I'm very excited about that. I don't think it doesn't make sense in any of my campaign stories for that to be a thing. I mean, it could be maybe on the outskirts, but having a party go into one of those things doesn't necessarily make sense unless they really wanted to. Like the Good Buddies on Wednesday, like you guys don't have a barbarian. Carrick is a fighter, but he's an older fighter. Like, you don't have any of those sprites who are like, I want to go fight a giant Tarask. Like, good job, buddy. Go for it. Like, you guys are like, nah. But it'll be fun to play with anyway. I mean, you guys know that I don't do anything if it's not for a reason, right? So, like, any of the special events will be something that becomes canon or lore building in Ukador. But what about you guys?
I think the one that I'm most excited, it is probably it is the Sunloft. It's the Buholland festival, because there are games and things, but there's also fun combat, and obviously the moment the sun sets, I'm bringing in spooky warrior things, and I'm totally gonna put a giant twist on it. I mean, maybe somehow there's a blunder during the day, and maybe the spirits aren't happy and they feel disgraced at what people have done. I don't know yet. We'll find out. But I wholeheartedly want to bring some these massive undead hulking warrior spirits back to just lay some smackdown on people. And I mean, again, in when I get to do that eventually, I mean, it's going to be a lore dump day of they're going to find out a lot more about these supposed heroes and warriors that they've been just basically worshiping for the last 700 years. Oh. And that's what I'm excited for, just because I found a way to be oh, it's a fun summer festival of heroes and awesome. Oh wait, oh my gosh, it's haunted. And that's what I wanted to.
That's super cool. For me, I don't know what it's going to be like, and I don't have any real details, but I just want an eclipse to do something in my world. Yes. And I want, because it's always so iconic, and it's so daunting to everyone. But it's always represents something evil, so I want to do something sort of Alice in Wonderland-esque, Yeah. But I just don't know what yet. But that's what I want to do one day if I ever get a chance to put that on players.
Oh yeah, no, I completely relate to that, because I totally have an eclipse event in my setting, and it's bad.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I have something similar as well, where it happens every block of time, and it's the blood moon, right? Where it is the certain sequence of an eclipse or whatever. And it's funny because April was she thought the 13th month in chat was she was talking about that as it was and the last day is the purge. There is a purge in Ukador that does happen on a blood moon. It's not a people pushed purge. It is something different. That's all I'll say. So we do have a few minutes left. Does anybody have any burning questions for one another that you want to ask?
Well, I was going to just point out one thing that I thought was kind of cool, is that all of us kind of somehow incorporated the moon, in being a basis for all of our stuff. I just thought that was kind of interesting that either we're like-minded or there's something to that, but everyone using moon cycles and lunar things to power their calendar.
I mean, that's kind of when you think about the moon and how much power the moon has. I mean, you think about the tides coming in, you think about a woman's moon cycle, you think about other things, other transitions. That's the only consistent, right? The only thing that changes is like a clock in our world is the moon. It's the only thing that shifts, the only thing that changes, the only thing that shows that the moon is spiraling around the earth. So it's the only consistent that is in everything. So it's because you can see the sun, it comes up and it goes down. Oh, cool, it comes up and goes down. Nothing changes about it. You can look at your sunrises and sunsets all day long and nothing ever changes, but the moon changes. So then understanding that, I think that's why I chose it anyway, is because there's so many things connected to it. Yeah.
Cool. Similar. I mean, I grew up pagan. So the moon is a big part of most pagan cultures, so I like the moon.
And where
I don't howl at it often, though.
Just me.
I should. I'll go out and howl at the moon tonight after Legends.
We'll howl together. It'll be great. Okay.
Okay.
We can hear each other.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very true. Like, because I feel like for a lot of cultures, nighttime represents the unknown. Like, and that's why it's so mysterious and so spooky, because you don't know what's out there. And the moon is, with nighttime, so it's like a very big, daunting, mysterious thing. And yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I love Sailor Moon, so that's part right. So
There you go. One thing I never really understood. I mean, we've talked about this other shows because like the sun is very aggressive. It's very angry. It's very fire and everything is just like I want to fight and I'm just whatever. And the nighttime is very calm and it's quiet. But even though all the spooky looky things happen at nighttime because it's dark and you can't see shit, but when you think about it the other way around, like nighttime is very calming. But I never understood. I mean, I do understand, but I never understand why like full moons are always like the most spookiness. Like fuck that. You can see everything during a full moon. Like the new moon, that's where it's at. You can't see shit. Like you're like, all right, it's really dark outside. I don't want to be here. Like that's where my mind goes. But anyway, so we are at time. So let's go do a little round robin real quick where people can find you. We'll start with Dianne.
Hey guys, my name's Dianne. You can find me at the Pretty DM on the internet. You can also find me here at Fabled42 all the time. And in about 30 something minutes, DMing Legends of Shao Gal. So you should come watch. It's gonna be good.
You should. Taryn.
My name is Taryn Hackett. You can catch me at Valrook on Instagram, and that's the only social media platform I care about. You can also catch me on Fabled42 every Monday in Legends of Shao Gal playing an alcoholic cat. I also play randomly as an emo edgelord. Fridays, Wizards of Ukador. It's great stuff. You should check it out. Me.
And
She's totally not gonna die tonight. Absolutely not.
And DeAngelo.
Yes, I am DeAngelo Murillo, and I run a website called The Geek Lyfe. That is thegeeklyfe.com. It has all sorts of articles and information and interviews with a bunch of awesome people. I stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/DeAngelo Murillo. And on Instagram, you can find me in various places as well at DeAngelo Muril 0. And then, so it's pretty cool. I'm always up to everything, so... thank you again for having me on here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for being here. And I am Chris Solo. You can find me at DM Chris Solo on all the social medias or Fable42 because this is my life. Go ahead and enter events with an S in the chat for the Between Show giveaway. I'm going to go ahead and stop this stream and then start up the Legends timer. And we will see you guys in 30 minutes.
Yeah, fuzzy buzzy.